Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with drdan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior and neurolinguistic programming practitioner specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our fifth episode of season 32, a very special guest, mindset shift, resilient expert, and author of Treasure Map to Joy, Miss Stacie Shiflett. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Stacie, the floor is yours.
Hi, Dan. Thanks so much for having me. Introduce myself. I'm going to be short about this because I have had so much life experience at 68 years old. I've been in so many different industries. I have pivoted and reinvented myself so many times. And what can I say? I'm a really proficient student at life. I am self-trained, self-made, and a lot of that is due to mindset.
Excellent. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for being here, Stacie, especially the last episode of season 30, no, not season 30, but the year 2025. And so I'm very, very glad, especially that you mentioned about the word mindset. So this is when people start coming into establishing New Year's resolutions to say, you know what, enough with this negative mindset. I need to start being more positive. I need to be more resilient. I need to pick up the pieces when shit hits the fan, so to speak. And it's time for us to be able to kind of give some words of affirmation, or like kind of inspiration to all of our listeners. And I think you're coming at the right time. So when it comes to establishing a change of mindset and allowing people to say, you know what I've done in the past is not working for me. How can I establish a new path for myself?
Well, I think there are two very, very important pieces to that. And they are, I have a program called Elevate Your Life, in which we chart your treasure map to joy. But what I find often is that we think we know what the problem is to solve, and we think we know what might make us happy, and we set off in that direction without doing two very important things. One is taking a really, really good hard look, an introspective, non-judgmental, honest look at your life as it is today, all the pieces and parts individually, how they relate to each other, and get a really good sense of what's working well, what's not working well, where your frustrations are coming from, etc. And then the next piece of that is to sit with, how do you want to feel in the future? And again, the way I walk my clients through that, and they can do it yourself as well. I'm offering it as a do-it-yourself now, really to look at all those different domains, and instead of looking at it as in a way of external achievement, how would you like to feel? How would you like to feel in your relationship, in your business, in your job? What kind of person do you want to be? And I think this operates like a GPS, right? Because it gives us our current location, and it gives us, where we want to go, right? Our destination. So without knowing those two things, you can't chart a map anywhere. So that is my best advice on where to start.
Well, that's actually an interesting analogy about a GPS, especially when it comes to the starting point and end point. But the thing is that unfortunately, life is very, very hard to predict, Stacie. It's very hard to be able to kind of like make sure that every step that we take is going to render the result that we are hoping for. And so when things do not happen, or do not happen the way we want, and when it comes to the part of resilience, and to be able to accept sometimes that things are completely out of our control, how do we just pick up the pieces and move forward towards that destination?
Well, most everything is in reality is outside of our control. Um, I think it's very, very important to take a look at what your default emotion is, right? So a lot of people default to anxiety or worry or frustration. And when you work consciously and intentionally to replace that with a default emotion of joy, that really acts as a foundation underneath everything else. So take grief, for example, and we have to honor those emotions and we do have to walk through them. But even when things are difficult, if we can step into gratitude for at least part of the day and remind ourselves of the things that we do have to be joyful about, it really helps, soothe yourself during those rough times. And believe me, I've had rough times, right? My marriage collapsed after 28 years. My first child died. I've had a lot of heartache to get through. And yeah, we have to nurture ourselves through that.
Okay, so the aspect of when things do not go our way, and people have the tendency to be able to say, well, if I screwed up here, I'm going to screw up everywhere. And so, how do you stop thinking this way? How do you stop saying that, okay, this whatever happened in this situation is very independent to that specific problem or challenge? It has nothing to do with all of the other things that I want to do in my life. So, but how do you detach yourself from that situation and not let yourself get depressed?
Well, I've been depressed, right? Most certainly. And it's a matter of allowing yourself to do that for a reasonable period of time,
Okay.
and then to make a conscious effort to step out of that, even if it's just a little bit day in and day out. But I want to make a point here about people that get locked into their story, right? So I work with a lot of divorced women and they really feel victimized. um, if you keep telling yourself the story that you are the victim in this circumstance, you will never be able to step out of it. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. We have to create our next steps and bring ourselves around and back into alignment, with what we want to create in our life. um, Victimhood is a very, very sad place to be, and I know when my son died, I was there, right? I really felt, how could this happen? um, but at some point in the process of grief, I realized that I did not want to be the woman that was grieving for decades. And I went to one session with I don't know, I feel compelled to tell you this, so I'm going to share it with you. I went to one session. It was a group session for parents of deceased children, and they had lost their children for a variety of reasons. And I was still very, very deep into grief. And there was a gentleman there. His wife was not there, and he talked to us. It had been 5 years since their daughter had died, and his wife was still unable to leave the house or go to the grocery store. It's the only session I ever went to. I walked out of there fully understanding that, because I didn't want to leave my house either. But it connected with me that I did not want to be that person. I understood that person. I had sympathy, empathy, compassion, all of the above. But I personally did not want, I realized I had a choice, right? I could choose to be the person that never left the house in 5 years, or I could choose to do the work to get back to living life. And so that's the choice that I made. I had a good support system,
Okay.
but that's the choice, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. But especially with when it comes to parents losing their kids. I mean, how old was your son?
He was a month old.
Oh, a month. Oh, okay, okay. I see. I see. So it was like a while back then. Okay.
Yes, it was a long time ago.
Okay, definitely. But at the same time, it's okay. So when it comes to other things about not losing someone's life or losing the life of a loved one, etc., anything else is just basically icing on the cake compared to what you've gone through.
Well, it is. I think my divorce was tricky, right? So the difference between losing my son, the foundation of my life was all still there, right?
Yeah.
We had welcomed, we were very excited about a baby, et cetera, et cetera. But the foundation of my life was still in place. With my divorce, the foundation of my life crumbled. Now I was more fortunate than some. I had my own business. I have financial security. I was able to navigate a lot of that. And it, even with that, it took me a while, right? But I had to remind myself that I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for my happiness. I'm responsible for my joy. I'm responsible for my actions. And I realized that my grief was kind of leaving me stuck in anger, right? I was a pretty angry woman there for a little bit. And when we get tired of our own BS is when we make a change. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be angry forever. And I have charted my life in so many different directions, in so many different careers, and in so many different ways over the years that I had to remind myself, okay, Stace, you have to take charge here. Instead of just floating like a leaf down a stream, bumping into rocks in the shore and everything else, I wanted to navigate my life. So that's what I chose to do.
Interesting. So when it comes to helping others, or especially our listeners here, when they're now going to embark into the year 2026, and to be able to say, well, look, I need to look at my life differently, just take a good hard look and see the things that I've done well in 2026 or 2025 and the things that I've been lacking, and focus our energy on that. But then you mentioned about taking responsibility or accountability, but to what extent, if life is sometime completely out of our control, even if we take accountability for our action, there's still a lot of things that are left to the unknown.
That's life, isn't it? I
That's
mean, so um, we have to be a bit uh, flexible. Things happen, things are always going to happen. We don't have a promise that life is going to be easy. And generally, I choose to learn, right? What is this teaching me? What am I learning? Embrace the experience, even the sucky ones, right? You've got to embrace all of the emotions that go along with it.
Mhm.
The thing is, you just don't want to get stuck there.
Correct. Correct. That's so true. And in face of adversity, when it comes to dealing with the things that have been plaguing you or plaguing your mind and have been bringing you down, I mean, beside, obviously going and getting the help that you need, is there like a specific strategy that you recommend, Stacie, or that you would advise for people to start um, taking a new path or making a new change in their life? And I know small steps always brings to wherever you need to go, but to take that first step is what people have the most challenge.
It is. And there's a couple of ways to do that. I'm very big into just being radically aware, right? We talk to ourselves all the time. So how are you talking to yourself? And by that I mean with your thoughts. So you have to become very, very aware of that, and then you need to redirect it. Because what we're telling ourselves often is not the truth, right? We may have the belief, but that's not the truth.
Correct.
And we have to be very conscious about that. Now, I have an exercise that will tell your guests at the end of the show. If I had like one piece of advice to give people that is absolutely life changing, that is calm your emotional triggers when we react. And we react in negative emotions. I'm not talking about happy reactions, I'm talking about the negative emotions.
Correct.
And if we can start just noticing that throughout the course of our day and dig into it a little bit, right? Be curious about it. Instead of just reacting, be curious about it. Go, oh, where is that coming from? And think about it. And I have a little workbook that I'll share with your guests at the end of the show. But really start thinking about it, and where did it come from, and is it true, and what would you know this from NLP, right? So we do some perspective shifting, right? If there was a stranger standing there watching this, what would happen? What does the person that you reacted to, what do you think they are thinking? And I think that is one of the most life-changing experiences and a great way to get started.
Well, I mean, not everyone is unfortunately expert in neurolinguistic programming to be able to really understand the different aspect of this modality. But at the same time, it's something that, as you mentioned, it's important to be able to be aware of your environment. And being
Yes.
aware, it's basically just minimizing our risk or taking calculated risk for every step that we take or for every decision that we make. But then again, when things does not really, like uh, end the way that we want, then people become too afraid to make another decision in their lives.
It kind of depends on the person. I mean, I've walked away from things and ended things and created boundaries and made some very difficult decisions because they needed to be made, right? For my personal well-being and health and happiness. And I think so often that we're so afraid of the unknown, but that's also where the possibilities exist.
Correct.
Yes.
That's so true. And but that's the thing. But this is the courage that people need to start jumping into. I mean, it's more also a leap of faith because you have faith in your decision, you have faith in your abilities, you have faith in your decision making abilities. But at the same time, even if you're the smartest person in the room, even if you have done well for yourself, there's always peak and valleys.
Yes. Someone asked me the other day to define what fearless meant to me. And to me, fearless doesn't mean having no fear. Um, it means having the confidence to step into something new, giving yourself the space and the grace, the ability to learn, the ability to make mistakes, um, and having the confidence to do that, I think really is what fearlessness is. You may not have straight up 110% confident I can do this right out of the gate, but if you keep doing what you're doing, nothing's going to change. So if you want to change something, you have to start stepping into that somehow and have the confidence that you will learn and can eventually excel at whatever it is you're choosing to do.
Yes, and that actually you do make a very good point. But just like they say that cold is the absence of heat, is fear the absence of courage? Because we all have courageous abilities to be able to make decision. But when we start fearing, do we let go of the ability to be courageous?
We can. I think we lapse back into safety, right? We know our status quo, we know what to expect. Our egos love stability,
Mhm.
whether it's the best situation for us or not. And we are wired as humans that way, as you know. We are wired for safety and familiarity.
Mhm.
And I think even just knowing that benefits people because they go, oh, that's right. This is kind of instinctual for me to stay here. But we can't advance through life um, without stepping outside of our comfort zone,
Mhm.
which is the typical term for it. I think if we want to do something different than we're doing, if we want to feel differently than we feel today and have a different life experience, then we need to understand what life experience we want to have and start taking baby steps in that direction. I think that's the other issue that happens with a lot of people is they try to take too much change on at once.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. It's like creating a new habit, right? Just like not reacting to something. Um, and we create a new habit to make that pause to say, oh, how would I rather react here rather than reacting automatically on autopilot without giving it any conscious thought. It's that's just how we do it.
That's so true. But then you mentioned earlier as well, Stacie, that we have the tendency to talk to ourselves. So that means that that little inner voice that we hear often, sometimes that inner voice can be very critical. Sometimes it can be very encouraging. So when we feel that it is critical, should we ignore it, or this is a way for our mind to be able to put us into certain defense mechanism?
Oh, that's a way. All of these things I call waypoints on your treasure map to joy, right? If you're having a negative thought about yourself, figure out why. Where did that originate? Why do you think that? Is it true? Um, and work yourself through it again, a little bit at a time. And I think that we have to get to a point of having the ability to have some stillness, right?
Hmm.
Because we can't hear ourselves without stillness. We hear the nagging things that talk about us all day long, right? If you walk by a mirror and go, oh my God, I'm fat, or I'm old, I've got whatever.
Yes.
um we wouldn't talk to our best friends that way, but yet we talk to ourselves that way. And one way that I put it is that we take ourselves with us everywhere we go. So who do you want to take along with you? Do you want to take someone that's, critical and grouchy and pessimistic? Or do you want to take someone with you that's a joy to be around? And we're around ourselves more than anybody else. So why not be joyful with yourself?
That's so true. And I always give the example to some of my patients as well, Stacie, that if let's say you had a choice to take one person with you on a deserted island, and you'll be with that person for until you pass, what kind of attribute would you want from this person? Would you want someone negative? Would you want someone that is joyful, someone that is funny, someone this? So I tell them to write down those attributes, and then these are the attributes that they should have from that point forward.
Yes, and we cultivate them a little bit at a time. I think if you have someone that's naturally a pessimist,
Mhm.
and there are people that are naturally pessimists, you can't just say, "Oh, now you need to be an optimist," right?
Right.
But what we can teach and what they can do is say, "Okay, this trait I'm going to work on." So when I find myself forecasting the worst possible outcome to whatever it is I'm going to do, there's that awareness. You have to be quiet and hear yourself thinking that, right? You stop and you redirect. And the more often you do that, the more consistent you do it. And that's why I say break it down into something little baby bites. The more you consistently do that, you are retraining yourself to think a different way, and then it becomes a habit. Then you pick the next thing and you go on. I call it chunking it down. And I learned this when I raised llamas and I would train my babies, right? Halter train them. You don't grab it and throw the halter on it in one day. Some people do that. It's one session. Here we go. That halter's going on, baby, and I'm gonna, strap you in. No, let them smell it first day. Maybe put it over their nose. You just chunk it down into the little bittiest bits until it's not scary anymore.
I see. Yeah. So because yeah, sometimes it can be too overwhelming, and for them not to be able to start taking any affirmative step forward to be able to make the change that they so want in life. But then if you kind of like compartmentalize every little box and you try to tackle each one individually, it's not as as big I would say mountain to surmount.
Yes, and I think that's a lot of what happens in the personal development industry, just in general, right? We try to change too many things at once.
Yes.
And we have to be very intentional about it. And I know when I work through with my clients, it's like, okay, what's the one thing that's going to get you the biggest positive result that you're looking for across your entire life? And, maybe back to our pessimist example, maybe that's the thing. Maybe not being pessimistic is going to positively impact every area of your life. So you work on that one thing, you become keenly aware of it, you catch yourself when you do it, you pause, you hesitate, you redirect. And that's how we retrain ourselves.
And it's retraining usually, just like you mentioned about establishing new habits, which can take between 45 to 55 or 60 days. Is that take around the same amount of time?
Yeah, I think so. It depends on how aware you are, but yes, I think it does. Because what happens is that one day you will be in a circumstance and you will go, you'll either say something or do something or think something, and you kind of go, oh, did you hear that? That was me, right? Like the me 2 months ago wouldn't have said that.
Correct.
That's me. And it becomes natural. Uh, It's just like driving. We have to practice for it to become natural and second nature. And it really is that simple.
Yeah, unless if someone got into a car accident and then they fear going back to on the wheel and then having to re-experience the same trauma. So it depends on
True. That's a different case. Yes.
depends on the traumatic event that they've experienced. So then again, if someone is dealing with PTSD, then we're getting to another kind of ball game here. But yeah, I could see what you mean, but it's easier said than done as well, Stacie. Unfortunately, yes, we understand things a little bit better, but for those who are actually suffering from certain predicament, it's not as easy for them to just kind of like make those changes that we are discussing about right now.
Yeah, and there are so many modalities and psychiatrists and psychologists and coaches and there are a lot of different people out there that can support you. If you need the support, and a lot of us do. I have relied on support several times over the course of my life. And there's nothing wrong with needing that support either. So find the practitioner. If you need the support and you need the accountability, find the practitioner to help you um, resolve and move through whatever it is you're trying to resolve and move through.
Well, that's definitely something that I hope people could actually take advantage of. So, in your book, The Treasure Map to Joy, is it something that is it more a practical book where people can just implement certain strategies in it and then start achieving the goals that they set themselves to achieve?
It is actually a parable.
Okay.
It is a parable, and the subtitle of the book is Treasure Map to Joy, and the subtitle is One Woman's Journey from Disruption to Joy.
Okay.
And it is her story of overcoming a life that fell apart. And how she did that. And she does have a coach in the book. And it mirrors my program. I don't go into the program in detail, a little bit about the first two modules in it. But it really is about taking the steps and the accountability for figuring out what's going to bring you joy and make you happy and at peace with yourself in this season of your life, right? Sometimes we're locked into a role that we had, right, with let's say mothers, and now they're empty nesters, right?
Mhm.
And they don't know what to do because they're not mothering anymore. That's a natural transition of a season of life, right? So how we think about that reflects our emotions. And so, like anything, that's one of the things that the character in my book had to do was sort of reevaluate, reconnect with her adult children.
Mhm.
And they all sort of redefined their roles within that. And it worked beautifully in the book.
Well, and so yeah, talking about the book, where can people find it before we end this podcast? I just want to make sure that people can actually access it and also how to reach out to you.
Yes, you can. Everything about me is on my website, all the contact information, and that is modernconsciousness.com. Under programs on my website, there is a free resource, a workbook on calming your emotional triggers. So that's very good. The book is available on my website. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yeah, Treasure Map to Joy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Stacie, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation to this episode by sharing your personal story about resilience and how important it is to listen to your inner voice at any time to find the right path in life. Now, to our million of listeners out there, we hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And also, we're very excited for what's ahead in season 32 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Through every season of adversity, resilience is born not from avoiding challenges, but from choosing to rise in the middle of them. Our mindset becomes our anchor, reminding us that even when lives feel heavy, we still have the strength to keep moving forward. When we lean into gratitude, we begin to see light in places we once overlooked, and the journey becomes a little less burdened and a little more meaningful. Now, challenges may shape us, but they do not define us. What truly guides us is the quiet, steady wisdom within, our inner voice that knows when to push, when to pause, and when to trust the process. Listen to it, honor it, and let it remind you that you're stronger and more capable than your circumstances. My name is Dr. Ddanamzallag, wishing you all a happy and safe new year, welcoming 2026 with prosperity, health, and abundance.